Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal's space program, where we just finished the first Vostok flight, which was the first orbital flight, of course, with Yuri Gagarin. Unfortunately, the Soviets did not design their craft to be particularly recoverable, as in recoverable in any way, and so within the confines of Kerbal Space Program, we were fairly limited in what we could get out of it. So we're going to hop into the R&D facility here, and we'll see what we can get. Now, one thing we're going to need for the Mercury flights is a launch escape tower. I'm not sure what the nearest that we can get is. This is landing. We're not... Actually, that is a launch escape system junior. That will cost 90. Okay, so we would need this for our Mercury program. Or we'd need to create something similar ourselves. Or, you know, like a launch escape system. We'd probably use the Junior, though, to be honest. That's probably what we'd end up doing. So it would be something along the lines of this. This also includes heat shields. Do we have any heat shields at all, though? We do. So we can definitely make use of that. These RCS blocks are going to be useful for us, too. So we're going to need like 180 total science. Let's see what we can make, and we'll attempt to make something fairly similar to a Mercury capsule here. So this is going to be the actual capsule. So I want to point out, the Mercury program technically launched on 3 different launchers. The Little Joe, I believe, the Atlas, and the Redstone rockets. The Redstone rockets were the suborbital flights, which we'll be doing here. The Atlas rockets were the later orbital flights. So we'll not be doing that just yet, but we're going to start with the Mark 1 command pod, which is clearly intended to be Mercury-inspired. There's no doubt about that. I want to hop over and show you some of the capsule things that we're going to be inspired by here. So, unfortunately, these pictures don't really get bigger than this. We can do this, but it's not, you know... It's not great. So this is the retro pack here, where we've got some engines. We've got a heat shield here, and this is clearly detachable. This is the actual capsule, which we already have. This is the parachute pack here, which contains 3 parachutes. They've got a main chute, a backup chute, and a drogue chute. So we'll see what we can do about that. I'm not sure what number 5 is here. Number 6 is launch escape. What was number 5? 5 is the antenna section. Okay, fair enough. So we're going to be working on making this, and then we'll get over to the actual launch vehicle here in just a moment. So let's pop over to KSP again. We know that we're going to need a heat shield here for sure. So we're going to put in something kind of like that. We want this to be a black heat shield because that's what it looked like in the photo to me anyway. And then a decoupler here, and this was definitely a small decoupler. Unfortunately, we don't have a small decoupler. So this is the best we can do right now, is to do something kind of like this. And then have a retro pack here. So this would be like a thruster pack, right? We know that this has a built-in reaction wheel to it. So we don't need to worry about a reaction wheel. We can use something like a pug. It's not the right size, but we don't have the right size unlocked, so that's fine. We can just toss in like a T100. And really, this was a very, very small maneuvering pack. It's just something along the lines of this. So then they had the parachute pack up top here, which we could emulate with like a Mark 16 parachute, but I don't think that's particularly accurate. I think what we're going to do here is we're going to actually toss in something like an experiment storage unit, which is not a perfect analog, but we can strap on parachutes onto this. So that's what we'll do there. I would also like to have some form of a science bay on here, but that's really not very historically accurate. If we were to toss, say, this in here, like this, that's really not particularly historically accurate to have that here. So we could just strap on the science equipment to the sides. Or we could consider it like part of the antenna section, which really, for the antenna section, all we're going to do is we're going to toss in a high gain antenna. And that high gain antenna is going to go like over here or something on this side. Yeah, I think that's acceptable, because what we're going to do is we're going to emulate the chute situation, except we're probably going to use both chutes, the main and the backup. And we would have the 2 chutes go here, and then we'd have the drogue chute over on this side. They only have the 1 drogue chute, and then the way that drogue chutes work in reality is, of course, a little bit different from how it works in KSP. The drogue chute in reality, the point behind that is to, like, pull out the radial mount parachutes, but that's not the way it works in KSP. So we're going to have this be like a combined antenna section, and I don't like the way that this clips in, really. I don't suppose we can move that up. Not really substantially. Although, maybe once we get our launch escape tower going here. Now, what are we going to do for the launch escape tower? That's going to be a little bit awkward for us right now. Maybe we should omit it for the moment, but I don't think so. I think we should at least try to have something that looks kind of like a launch escape tower. So it would go up kind of like this, and then we'd have, you know, like thrusters up here, but we don't really have the thrusters unlocked at this point. So that's fine. We're not too concerned about that. We could just mount science equipment up here instead and have this for like the Redstone flights be like, well, maybe our launch escape wasn't quite built yet. It was, in reality, to be clear. It was built, but we don't have the tech for it just yet. So this could be a good place to mount some science equipment. Yeah, it definitely could. So we would mount like a mystery goo containment unit up here, temporarily. And then we would mount a 2-hot thermometer over here. We would mount a press map barometer over here. And that's basically all of our science equipment other than the Science Junior. I don't think we can get away with bringing a Science Junior, to be honest. So I think we'll not do that for right now. This, of course, needs to be jettisonable. So we would need to jettison this. And the question is, what side is this decoupler going to go with? Is it going to be stuck here, or is it going to go with this? Because I want it to go with this. We don't have a smaller decoupler at the moment, so this is the best we can do. And I'd like to have something here. I suppose we could bring a second mystery goo containment unit. So one of these would be measured in Atmo, and the other in vacuum. That could work. We could certainly do that. So I'm going to name this the MR-1, because, of course, this is going to be the Mercury Redstone 1. And this is going to be our first iteration of the Mercury capsule. This is definitely not amazingly accurate, and will improve this once we return from our first flight. Okay, so I want to put this out on the pad real quickly here, and this is going to be reverted. By the way, reversion rules as of now. Reversion rules are as follows. Reversion is allowed exclusively as a time saver. If we revert, we are assuming the following. The craft is a loss. The crew bailed out. So essentially we have to replace the craft, and the crew bailed out and parachuted down to safety, and it's just a time saver. So the question right now is, if we decouple this, it stays connected here. Okay, so that's wrong. We're going to revert that back. And again, this was just an on-pad test. All of those parts were recoverable, so we don't need to pay anything for that. So I want to flip around this decoupler, and we'll do it like this. So that way, the decoupler goes with the launch escape tower, which is only a mock-up of a launch escape tower right now. So now we're going to need to make the Redstone rocket. So we're going to toss in a decoupler here, and we'll do the best we can on this guy. So I'm going to have this also be dark for the time being. And let's take a real quick look at our launch vehicles for the Mercury program. So that is these guys right here. So this is the Atlas rocket on this side. This is the Little Joe, which we are skipping. This is the one that had the uncrewed launches with like monkeys and such. This one in the center. Oh, wow, that is very blown up. That is a little too blown up. This one in the center is the one that we are going to attempt to emulate here. So we can see that there's not really a fairing on this. There's this kind of striped portion. It's a single stage, single fuselage rocket, and we've got fins right down here at the bottom. Okay, so let's see about what we can do here Let's hop on back over. And we are going to see about getting ourselves a decoupler on here. We have a decoupler. What am I talking about? We are seeing about putting on some fuel tanks here. So these are the, like, striped fuel tanks, right? That's the best we can do for the striping at this moment. And then we end up with, like, another roughly 400, roughly T400 that is white, although it says United States on it. We don't have the ability to do that, but we can do something kind of like this. Yeah, something along those lines size-wise. And then there's like a black stripe, which we can emulate like this. And then there's approximately, I would say perhaps 6. And then another black stripe at the bottom. Approximately. It's not exact, certainly. And then there's fins with like a checkerboard pattern. The fins appear to me like there are 4 of them. They're definitely some form of control fin. So we would go for, say, Delta Deluxe winglets. I don't think we have any capacity to make these be like checkerboard. We don't, but we could make them be dark like this, and that kind of covers it. Kind of. And let's put on a swivel here, and let's see what that thrust to weight looks like. 1.24. So that's a little on the low side. I'm not shocked about this. That is actually a little better than I expected this to be. We're probably going to have some weight savings up here eventually. We could consider shrinking down this stage here, but honestly, I think that's relatively close. I mean, this stripe didn't need to be a full tank necessarily, and technically I don't know that this stripe exists, but I think it looks good. So it would be something along the lines of this. Let's put out a revertible, and yes, some of these are going to be revertible because they're specifically designed to be simulations. So if I state that it's a simulation, that means that it has to be reverted, okay? So if it's not stated to be a simulation, a reversion means a loss of the vehicle, and we have to pay the cost of the vehicle. If it is, and that would actually be rounded up to the nearest multiple of 1,000. If we do not call it a simulation, if we do call it a simulation, it is now required to be reverted. So as a simulation, let's put this out on the pad, and let's see how the aerodynamics of this go. It's going to be slow off the pad for sure. It's going to be low thrust to weight. So let's see how this goes. This is, of course, only intended to be suborbital, and to be clear, this almost certainly is going to be suborbital. So let's throttle this up, SAS on, and we'll see what we've got here. Certainly slow off the pad. We're going to go straight up here for a moment, and that moment specifically is going to be until we hit about 100 meters per second. Then I'm going to do an aerodynamic stress test. And by that, I mean we're turning straight to the horizon. It's going to be more than we'd ever do in a real flight. So 100 meters per second straight up, and then this is the... Okay, we're very stable, actually. We're a little overstable, maybe. I'm actually kind of struggling to turn this, and that's maybe a good thing. This is incredibly, incredibly stable. Now, of course, we don't have anywhere near the altitude we need to be going horizontally, right? That's not the point. The point is... Okay, I see a little bit of bending going on up over here. Let's bring it back. This is definitely flyable. It lacks power. There's no doubt about that. What is our current apoapsis? 6 kilometers? Yeah, I'm not shocked about that one. We're not going very fast. What is our current thrust to weight? 2.7? So the real question here is, do we have the power to get this thing suborbital? And, I mean, obviously on the approach that we took, we're almost certainly not going to get there, right? We needed a lot more vertical speed. So we're going to revert this back. Now that we've completed our aerodynamic test, I want to complete a burn duration test. What I mean by that is this is also going to be reverted. We're going to go straight up and see just how much we can get done here. So we're going to do throttle up, SAS on. We're going to lift off here. We're going to lock to prograde. Okay, prograde is taking us over this direction. We're not going to do that. I want to go up. So we're just hanging out here for right now. We're just going as up as we can. Maybe ever so slightly over to the east. But that would be a very slight thing. This thing, the problem with it is that, well, yes, it's incredibly stable. What it isn't is lacking in spaghetti factor. There is a substantial amount of wiggling that happens here. That's fine. We just want to see how we do getting vertical speed here. We're definitely picking up a shimmy. And we may need to run a strut just like down here. That might end up being necessary. We'll see. There's certainly a shimmy there. Thrust to weight of about 2. Not too bad. Remember, we don't have to make it into orbit. This is a suborbital flight. So all we need to do is make an apoapsis over 70. And I think we can do that with this vehicle. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we can do that. But again, this is a reverting flight. We're definitely going to revert this one. So that's an apoapsis of 40. I want to go kind of straight up right now until we hit somewhere around... Actually, here is pretty decent. We want to be getting as much horizontal speed as we can right now. So we're just going to go directly over to the horizon. And at this point, it's clear. We have to revert this because this is a simulation. It's clear that we can do what we want to do. So we're going to revert this to launch. And now that I'm confident that there are no fundamental issues with this craft, I think we're clear to actually do a real launch of this. The Mercury craft is ready to go here. Who was piloting MR-1? I've actually forgotten this one. I'm checking. This is actually MR-3. This is not MR-1 at all. This is MR-3. And this was this is Alan Shepard that was in this one. Beautiful. So, call sign of Freedom 7. That is very American. Okay, wonderful. So we're going to lift off here. This is a real launch. If we revert, the craft is considered a loss. So off we go. We're going to grab our data that we can. And we're going to grab one of our mystery goo observations at this point. We're going to have a lot of flights through this area. And now we're going to collect all of this data. We're going to keep our other mystery goo observation for when we are actually in space. So we're going to be going relatively straight up here. I do want to be over this way ever so slightly, getting some horizontal speed. Okay, somewhere around here. And I think that it's pretty clear that we can start our horizontal turn somewhere around 40 kilometer apoapsis, based on our previous simulation. Hopefully we don't get too much spaghetti wiggling going on here. This is definitely a little bit of a spaghetti rocket. But let's just get some altitude here. Okay, so we're going to be parked here for the moment, and we're not going to grab this EVA report. We would love to get 180 science out of this in total. So we need like 135. I don't know that we're going to get that much out of this particular flight. But that would be great to do. I'm going to lock to prograde at this time. And for now, that's looking absolutely okay. Apoapsis is high enough that now we're going to head directly over and get as much horizontal speed as we can. Again, we are not angling. We picked up a bit of a roll there. We are not angling at this time to make it into orbit, right? Oh, there goes the launch escape tower. That's actually fine. I didn't check that staging, but that is actually fine. We're not looking to make it into orbit here. We are just looking to make it into... And actually, I'd like to have a little bit more altitude here. So we're just looking to make a suborbital flight here. We're at 60 kilometers. We have a lot of horizontal speed right now, but that's what we want for this sort of a suborbital flight. Okay. Now I'm going to go to pure horizon. And we're going to burn here until we're at an apoapsis of... I mean, in KSP, 70 kilometers is in space. In reality, the marker is usually considered to be 100 kilometers. We'll just burn here for a while. We don't have enough to make it into orbit, and that was expected. With the Redstone rocket, we are not planning to make it into orbit. This is purely a suborbital flight. So we could burn out all of our fuel here. And I think that's maybe not a bad idea. Just burn off all of this fuel. We'll extend out our antenna as soon as we are in space here. Not that we actually need it for any particular reason. And I'm going to move our staging here a little bit. There we go. Something along the lines of that. And there we go. We're in space, and we're also out of fuel. So I'm going to go ahead and ditch our retro rocket here. Not really our retro rocket. They call it the retro pack. We're going to ditch that. Beautiful. And here we are in our Mercury capsule, which in reality, this is, of course, a like cylinder here that contains the parachutes. And there's significantly less Z fighting on the American flag in reality. But this is fine. This will be absolutely A-okay. So we're going to grab what data we can. Wait a second. Our data was all on the launch escape tower. I'm dumb. Well, we're going to hop over to retrograde. We'll see if we can grab any EVA reports at least. And this will be recovery of a rocket from a suborbital flight, which is better than what we got from the Soviet flight. So that's something. We're about to hit apoapsis here. And I'm just going to physics warp forward here. We'll keep an eye to see if we get anything that we can grab for science. That would be great. But once we have our actual capsule for the either next flight, the next flight was also a Mercury Redstone flight. So the first Mercury Atlas flight is where we're going to look to be much more accurate with this, I think. Okay, we're over water right now, but we're going to be passing over some biomes here. Yep, this is shores. Got it. Grasslands we already have. Okay, this is flying high over the water. Grab it and hop in. That's the only flying high we're going to grab. That's going to be very dangerous, of course. We're going to retract our antenna here. And downward we go. We're going to have to lose enough speed here. We want to be pointing pure retrograde. We're going to need to lose enough speed here to, of course, slow on down. And we can see we're coming down. There's a lot of air still between us and the ground. We're going to need to lose enough speed to use our drogue chute here. Suborbital flights are, in my opinion, more dangerous than orbital flights. Because you have less air between you and the ground. So you have less time to aerobrake. That said, we are slowing down. Are we slowing down enough? We're 30 kilometers up right now. I think we're probably okay. 1.6 kilometers per second. Yeah, we're fine. This is absolutely okay. No problem whatsoever this time. That's great. We can grab a crew report for flying low over the water. And once we slow down enough, we'll grab this EVA report. We can fire off our drogue chute at this point. And SAS can be turned off. The chutes will yank us around slightly oddly. But that's fine. We'll get our main chutes out. Cool. And we've slowed down enough that I think that we are certainly going to be set up well for this. It's definitely true that KSP appears to be designed with a NASA bias. KSP is much better suited for this sort of a mission. No doubt about that. We're going to grab our EVA report, and we're going to hop back in. Wonderful. And downward we float. physics warping our way down to the water. So there's a drogue chute deploying. Technically, at this point, the drogue chute should be cut, but there's not really a reason to do that. So we're not going to. We're just going to go on down with our ridiculous chutes. We're at 4 meters per second right now. That is very ridiculous, actually. 4 meters per second is going to take a while to get down to the bottom. Okay. Good thing we've got physics warp. So we're about 440 meters up, so that, of course, naturally means about 100 seconds until impact. And we'll splash on down, which, to be clear, the Mercury astronauts did indeed splash down. There famously was an incident on one of them that the capsule might have started to flood slightly. I'm sure it's fine. Absolutely fine. Yeah, the hatch unexpectedly blew off in Mercury Redstone 4. So that was not, this time, but that's fine. We're going to collect our data here. We're going to grab a crew report from splashing down at the water, and then we'll recover this vessel and see just how much science we got out of that. That is a successful flight of MR-3. I don't know why I was calling it MR-1, because that was one of the uncrewed test flights. MR-3 is now complete, so we get 200,000 for that. That is magnificent. And then the question is, how much science did we actually get? So let's add ourselves the funding as soon as we can here. 52.1 science. It's enough to get ourselves either RCS or a launch escape tower. I'm going to go for the launch escape tower for now, because our next flight is going to be MR-4. So we can do some upgrades to the Mercury craft here, and that'll be absolutely great. We, of course, need to get ourselves our funding here. So we'll add in 200,000. There we go. Fantastic. And we're ready to move on to MR-4. It is time to put a cut in here, of course, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, MR-4 upgrades, and we'll do another suborbital flight. This time, we're not going to abandon our science instruments. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Andy McGar, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12UK, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.